to Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie. So, just now I realized that I did not film my wrap up for April. So, sorry this is a little late, but here is my wrap up for April. So, first, I am going to talk about two of the books that I read that I don't have physical copies of. One is I read a physical copy of it, but I borrowed it from my aunt, so I gave it back to her already. And then the other one was an audiobook. So first we have the one that I physically read, but I don't have it, the physical copy anymore, is The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. And I apologize because I read this at the beginning of the month, and I don't remember the names of the characters, not even the name of the dog. But this is a book narrated by a dog, and we get his life story. And the book does opens with the dog dying, so that's not really a spoiler. But I mean, dogs don't live that long, so I think we all know that most dog stories, the dog is going to end up dying at some point, is going to die by the end of it. We get his life from puppyhood all the way to his death with his owner, a race car driver, and his family. And like his master, he becomes obsessed. The dog becomes fascinated and obsessed with racing, is very loyal and proud of his master for his racing, and is very supportive. And eventually his master gets married to, I don't remember the wife's name, and they have a daughter. And his wife's in-laws aren't too crazy about him. They don't really like him. They kind of, they don't trust him, and they're just very, very snobby too. And the wife ends up getting cancer, which the dog actually is the first to notice it. He can start smelling the cancer on her, and it's kind of about the dog and his master, his humans dealing with the situation and trying to survive it. And it's just a very heartbreaking, very emotional story. It's probably gonna make you cry. I really liked the dog and how, I thought it was funny how insightful he is and how perceptive he is, because, I mean, I'm sure dogs are very smart. I am a dog person. I love dogs, and, I've heard that, poodles, for instance, are very intelligent, and, there are other dog breeds that are really intelligent, and I think maybe even, my dog comes from, because he's half poodle and half golden retriever, and I think golden retrievers are also smart, I think. So yeah, I know that they're smart, but I don't think they're that smart, that they're that perceptive. I mean, granted, I don't know. I cannot hear dogs' thoughts. I'm not psychic. I'm just speculating here. I just don't think that dogs are really as intelligent as us, as humans. They're not as, their feelings aren't as complicated as ours are. But yeah, I just think that was kind of cute. And I do like some of the dogs, his narration, his commentary on the situation, both the good, the funny stuff, and then the very sweet stuff, and the very loyal, his more loyal thoughts to his master, and not liking the in-laws, not trusting them, and his wanting to protect his master and the family. I did not like the whole how his master kind of lost his temper. I mean, I can kind of understand, because sometimes, yeah, when your dog destroys some of your stuff, you might accidentally lose your temper. I always make sure I keep my temper in check when it comes to when one of our dogs. But I don't know how erect if he actually destroyed some of my property. But yeah, there's a scene where the dog ends up, attacking their daughter's stuffed animals, which brings into his his viewpoint is also interesting. Like, you can't entirely trust it. And of course, the way, because it's a dog's point of view, he's gonna look at things a certain way, different than we would look at it. He would, and maybe even exaggerate certain things. Because the dog, I mean, he sees literally from another height, from a literal different point of view. The custody battle stuff really pissed me off. The whole, that whole section of the book with the custody battle and everything, that I did not appreciate. That infuriated me. Not that it was a bad element of the book, but as in, I got, it angered me how the in-laws and what they decide, they're, trying to claim custody over the daughter. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't just have half-seas. Why do they have to have full custody of the child? Like, he's not a bad parent. He was not cruel or abusive to his daughter. He was there. He loved his daughter. He was willing to do what he needed to do. And there are ways that, why couldn't they go half-seas? Why couldn't his in-laws take her if he couldn't take her to to his races, then they could at least, she could stay with them for a period of time until he came back. I mean, despite what they thought about him, he was going to come back, and they know that. But it's just that I don't know why they couldn't compromise. Why did they have to have full custody? And I think they were already passing judgment on him from the beginning. But anyway, this is a really great and nice start to get things going in April, and I had a good time. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book ever, but I still had a good time with it. I'm still, I'm satisfied that I read it. Okay, so the other book that I don't have a physical copy of is Odd Thomas, because I listened to that on audiobook via Libby. And this is kind of a supernatural thriller story. You have Odd Thomas. He's this young man. He works at a grill. He works at a burger joint, and he works on the grill. Has a great girlfriend, Stormy. I mean, her name is actually Bronian, but she calls herself Stormy. And he has a lot of friends. Like, he doesn't have the best relationship with his parents. They're not really great people. But he has found a found family situation in the town he lives now. And Odd has a gift. He can see spirits and has a bit of a psychic connection to the spirit world. And this allows him to help the police solve cases. So he has a pretty good relationship with the captain of the police force. And one day, this guy comes into the grill who he has not seen before. I think he's been around town for a little while, and he is Thomas. Odd calls him Fungus Man. I don't remember why. And he starts getting bad vibes from him, and he learns that the guy is obsessed with serial killers like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, those types of people. And he also he has a vision that this guy is going to do something bad in the town, in the community. And so Odd decides he wants to stop him. He's going to stop him because he feels like he is meant, when he gets these psychic phenomena, these connections, it is his destiny to stop it. So he gets involved in hunting down and finding out what this guy's plans are. Even trying to warn his friends not to go out that day. And when he is venting about what happened with Stormy and trying to protect her, she gets involved and wants to help him because she wants to protect him. So they have a certain date. All they have is that a certain date, there's going to be a certain event that's going to happen. They have some vague images of that it's going to be a crowded place with lots of noise. Some people are wearing khaki. And he slowly does some detective work and tries to figure out where and when this guy is going to make his move. Um, and even asked the police to keep an eye on him because the police do. At least the police captain trusts him. Trust him. So this plot takes place within, I guess, 48 hours, maybe longer. I cannot remember, but it's like within a couple days. And this was very intense read, but also had a bit of a sense of humor with the way, you know, like Odd thought about things and his relationship with Stormy and with everybody else. Um, it was very charming, and I feel like Odd is a very likable main character. Often like there's like times when he interacts with the ghost of Elvis, so that I actually thought that was kind of funny. I really thought his relationship with Stormy was very sweet. You did get some backstory on both their relationships, both their histories. Like I said, Odd doesn't have the best relationship with his parents. His mom has some mental health issues, and his dad is kind of a playboy. Like he has a lot of women girlfriend. He has a girlfriend girlfriend's under 18, or at least or maybe 18 at least, a legal adult age. Actually, yeah, because you learn that the father had got in some legal trouble because he was dating someone that was under 18. So yeah, 18 and 20, I think, is his age preference. And like his interactions with his parents were just so like, I was disgusted with his dad and his girlfriend, his dad's girlfriend, not Odd's girl, not Stormy, but his dad's girlfriend. I was very disgusted, and she was such a horrible person. I did not like her. I wanted to smack her. And then the dad was such a jerk. And he didn't even want to tell his dad about his gift because he knew his dad would try to exploit it and get him on TV and get money out of him and stuff like that for using his gift. And then his mom, you thought she was going to be, when you first meet her for the first couple minutes, you think she's going to be actually kind of sweet, but you do get a hint when he talks to his dad. And, I got my first thought, oh, maybe his dad is just bitter or just doesn't have the best relationship with his ex-wife. But no, you find out so, like, rather quickly as the scene progresses that she's has some mental health issues. I'm wondering if she's depressed or that she's has some other issues, because like she just resents Tom. I keep wanting to call him Thomas because that's, Odd is not really a traditional name. So I keep wanting to refer to him as Thomas, but Odd, his name is Odd, his first name. She's so resentful and sees like that he's like, she sees him almost as a parasite. And she doesn't want to deal with anything, any problems, anything that ruins her content, perfect little world, like little box of a world that is normal and is perfect and just no problems, no complicated emotions. I mean, she's almost like someone who just doesn't, you get the impression she's almost someone that doesn't feel any emotions. I mean, she does feel some, but because she obviously is like I said, I think she might be depressed, but she doesn't like it did remind me of someone, but I cannot think of who I was reminded of when we got to that part of her. Um, but I always love, I love small town stories where characters interacting with the residents of small town and his relationship and how he has a bit of a found family element with these people. And I really liked that one dude. I wish I could remember the characters' names better, but the one that he maybe it's because of audiobook I don't remember them as well. You would think it would not be the case because I remember characters from TV shows, but that one guy that was like, he was kind of like an intellectual type. He was very smart and very well. He reads a lot, and he's he quotes a lot of famous historical figures like Shakespeare and Voltaire, and I'm trying to, like, he's always quoting to Odd, and Odd doesn't get the reference because his education is a little limited. I really like him. I love intellectual characters that are just like constantly throwing quotes about these people that not everybody would know, but not just the most famous ones like Shakespeare. Because that's the only reference he has is Shakespeare, so he constantly throws out when he's like, who do you think I'm referencing? He's always like, Shakespeare? Because it's the only person you know, so I just thought that was funny. But yeah, his relationship with him and that guy is really great. So it definitely builds up a lot of tension, and there was one aspect of the plot that I was a little like wanting to know more about it, and that was there's at one point he breaks into the house of Fungus Man, and there is a room that's just black. That when he goes into it there, it's so black that his hand disappears. When he puts his hand in the room and it disappears, and then it's almost like, it's very a weird situation because he goes in there, he braves going in there, he can't see anything because it's completely black. There's like nothing. He can't see anything, but then he sees the light coming from where the door is, and he sees himself standing there. So that part was interesting. I want to know what was going on there, but they never really explain it. So I'm wondering maybe they'll explain it later in another book, because it is a series. I don't know if it's a trilogy or a series. It might be a series. But yeah, that was very intriguing. I definitely wanted to get what the deal is with that. But there's lots of tension. And they did have there was a surprise later on where something you didn't expect to happen does happen. I don't know why people like. I mean, I guess people didn't like the ending because of I guess I can kind of get why people might not like the ending, but I didn't have a problem with it. I thought, yeah, it's a bitter ending, bitter pill as well kind of ending, but it's like it made sense to me. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised by the ending. And it wasn't personally for me. I'm not gonna hate on the ending just because of how things turned out for Odd. Like my heart will hurt for him, but that's I don't think that means it's a bad ending. But yeah, so it was a good audiobook. I like the narrator. I want to acknowledge that there's a narrator. I don't remember their name, but I did like him. He was a good narrator. I mean, it's hard for me to rate narrators because they all like I can't pinpoint what are the things I need to look for that make me like a narrator. But anyway, so there's the two ones I don't have a physical copy. Now let's go ahead and show all the ones that So first, after The Art of Racing in the Rain, I read Christine by Stephen King, which I already did a review for this one. And as I said in that review, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not because I'm not a car person, but I actually ended up enjoying it very much. I liked the characters. I definitely felt really I pitied Arnie. Like, he was definitely a character that, had all these expectations put on him by his parents. And he was kind of was considered a dork and not cool. And I can see why he's susceptible to the car. The power this car has over him. There is one thing that our second main character, who's our narrator, Dennis, that he does later on, that I can understand why people didn't like that, and didn't like that he did that. It's funny, in the movie adaptation, they kind of didn't put as much focus on what he does, that particular thing. But I guess maybe, I don't know if it was a time constraint, or maybe they didn't want to touch on that because of how they didn't know if people would like that or not, or maybe they just didn't think it was as important to have that part. I mean, this is a chunky book. But it's short compared to some of other Stephen King's other works. Also, I really, like I said, I love how King makes your characters at first, unless they're makes them, you feel for them. There's a lot of sympathetic characters that, you might not like at first, you might even hate, but then you get to know them and you see another side to them, or at least if they're a villain, then you kind of understand where they're coming from, and you can understand why, if you really think about it, what their logic is, even if it's crazy, even if it's irrational, or you can at least understand why they are the way they are. And as Mike from Mike's Book Reviews has said, this is really good with bullies and dealing with bullies and young kids dealing with that and the struggles of that, and then the temptation to want to punish them if you do have the power, the temptation for revenge. But anyway, so look at my review. Check out my review if you want to get more details on this. On my thoughts on Christine. Okay, so after that, we have I finally finished Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens. I love this book. This was so great. This was such a good. I mean, I love most Charles Dickens anyway. So this is about. So technically, our main character is not Mr. Dombey and his son, but actually our main character is Florence Dombey. So Mr. Dombey is a man who owns his own company. He's very excited for his wife to have a son, so to have a baby boy, so that he can prepare his son to take over his business. He is very proud of that. He's very, that's all who he is. But unfortunately, his first child is actually Florence, his daughter, and he just is dismissive of her, ignores her, thinks, oh, you're unimportant because you're a girl, you can't take over my business. So he just ignores her. And then when Florence is 6, he finally does have his son Paul. His son, who he names after himself. And he immediately is gung-ho teaching this kid, tries to even keep him away from the female influence of his sister. But things don't exactly go the way he expected with Paul. And this very much focuses on. And meanwhile, you see Florence just trying to live her life, but also mourning the lack of relationship she has with her father, and just trying to please him, and she just can't do it. She can never seem to make him happy, never please him. He just continues to ignore her, and her only comfort is her friends like Walter, who has a little bit, they have a little bit of an, infatuation with each other. And the various other people in the community who try their best to, including some of her maid. And it's very heartbreaking, and it's just, Mr. Dombey just infuriated me. And of course, this is looking at the struggles of being a woman and how dismissive people were of women in the Victorian era, and how so there's very much a look at gender roles and what your position, how a man and woman's positions in society, and how you're supposed to act. And there's some characters that don't act the way a man is expected to act. Like Walter, for instance, he's not a traditional male. And you have them compared to the characters like Mr. Dombey and Mr. Carker, who's, they are traditional, they have the traditional masculine qualities, but they're not great men. They're really horrible human beings. Now Mr. Carker is the villain. He is trying to take the family out from under Mr. Dombey, take his legacy from him. Even, when he tries to take a new wife, he tries to take her from him. And it's in which that's an interesting thing because like he tries to steal his new wife, who's I am so bad I don't remember these names. Um, tries to steal his new wife, and but then there's no point because she doesn't love either one of them. So there's discussion on marriage, what the role, how women are often forced into marriages, but then they don't love. Like this woman, she sees herself as being sent as Mr. Dombey's property, enslaved to him. So the lives of these women is heartbreaking, and you just Edith is her name, and I just was angry with her. I didn't blame her for being just so like fighting back and being like, no, I'm not gonna be your obedient little woman. I'm not gonna like he expected her to be obedient and like I'm the man. You have to do what I say. You have to please me and meanwhile you have Florence, who's such a good, sweet person who's done everything to please her father, and he barely acknowledges her. While he's just constantly butting heads with Edith until she, finally snaps. And just like Dickens' other novels, he has a lot of characters that are funny and fun and charming, like Captain Cuddle and in Walter's, I think his uncle. I also, Walter was a really sweet boy, and I also, the other guy who was vying for Florence's affections, I really liked him too. He was so sweet and nice, and he was not like, him and Walter did not fight over Florence. In the end, they both just wanted to make sure she was happy. So I really appreciated that this was a book where it wasn't like these two guys just fighting over her. Like it was actually just the other guy just was like, all that matters to me is Florence's happiness. And Mr. Toots, that's his name. I should remember that because Dickens always has funny names for characters. Mr. Toots, he was such a great guy and very sweet. I also liked her maid. She was really great, and she really cared about Florence. It was very much kind of like a mother, like she had like a couple mother figures. She had this woman, the maid, and then Edith was, of course, she was her stepmom. But her maid was really, in fact, she might have really like she really cared about Florence. In fact, I think she was more like an older sister to her. Like still looked after her. It was very protective of her and defended her against Mr. Dombey, but she was all like, she's maybe more like a sister to her. I felt like they were very much on equals. And also, there's just Dickens, his stories just have a way of, you get lost in the story. I mean, yeah, because his books are so long, I oftentimes put them down and we'll come back to them later. That's why I read it was in 2017 and going into now. I finally finished it. But yeah, either way, I absolutely love this book, and I don't know, this one might be second place for favorite Dickens book. I mean, I already am tempted to reread it, but I'm rereading Our Mutual Friend right now. Okay, so after that one, I read the memoir Monsoon Mansion by Sonell Barnes. Another really, good book. It's so sad and very tragic. This woman is telling about her life in the Philippines, how she lived this fairy tale life because her dad was a businessman, so he was a self-made man, and her mom was a socialite. It was her and her brother, and they had a really great life, but then, of course, a monsoon happens, and they lose everything, and the business was already failing. And her mom had lost a child, had a stillbirth, and so her mom became very bitter, blamed her father for what happened, for the failures of their life, and he just ends up leaving his wife because he feels like, I gotta take care of my business in these other countries, because he does business in these other countries. So he leaves them, and then the mom ends up getting married to, I guess he lived in America, but he came back to the Philippines, so I guess he was Filipino American. And he's not our main character. Sanal, just our narrator, does not like him, and he treats them horribly. When the brother insists, her and her brother try to have their own business, they end up having a heart to heart with their mom and tell her about this business that they start. They started a business where they provide a little bit of a taxi service for people. And they tell their mom one night when they have a heart to heart where she's apologizing, sorry she ruined their lives and everything, and she ends up telling their stepdad, and he takes it from them and sends them to school, and she just has such a horrible life with her family, and just wants to get away. And then eventually her older brother, whom she formed a very close bond with, he ends up leaving to go live with his dad because he actually has a different dad. And she ends up being miserable for several years, and has to go through her life her moment of becoming a woman, the hard way, and just having to get her own water, and their family the dad, to conserve money, her stepdad cuts off their water, and it's such a heartbreaking read, so tragic, and and it was very hard to read. Like, the good news what was so great, which is that our narrator, she's on Instagram now, so she actually has a great life now. She got out, and it actually gives you, there's a hope in a sense. And also the way she writes it, it reads like a fairy tale. Like, it almost reads like a Dickens novel, where the character, like, it almost reminds me a little bit of David Copperfield, where you had this, this character that grows up, but their parent married someone horrible, and then they are treated horribly, and they're like, and just trying to survive. And of course, her one comfort are books. She gets to go to the library, and it just makes me, it's so, like, it's such a beautiful thing to me. I mean, it's tragically beautiful, put it that way. Like, it's tragic, but it's also beautiful that she finds comfort in books, kind of like in Matilda. I'm trying to remember if she mentioned reading Matilda in this book. I mean, I can't remember if she had read that book or not. I would have to look, but I'm so happy for the author, that this book is still very much talked about, and I hope other people in the booktube community discover this book and read it. It's so great. It's heartbreaking, but it's a beautiful story, and this young girl is trying to survive. So I absolutely love that. And then we have okay, so this is fun for my Tolkien project, Beren and Luthien. And this is the basic story is that Beren is a human man, and he sees this beautiful Fae princess or elf. I don't know if she's an elf or not, if she's considered an elf. But he sees her dancing because she's known for her dancing. Her dancing is very hypnotic, and he falls in love with her at first sight. And so he immediately wants to marry her. So he goes to her father to ask if he could marry her, and her father laughs at him. He does not like this man, and he decides, thinking that he's gonna fail, he puts a challenge to him. He says, "You must get the Silmaril off this crown and this evil lord, and thinking he's gonna fail. He thinks he's gonna fail, and Luthien, who's starting to fall in love with him too, is like immediately like, no, don't do this to him. That's not fair. And so she tries to go after him, but her father has her locked up in a tower. But she does find a way to escape, and she finds her way and helps Beren get the Silmaril. So this is very much a fairy tale romance. It's like there's a character going on a quest, a brave knight trying to save his, prove his worth to, the king and his beloved, and you have the beautiful princess. And I do like how she does some, I really loved how Luthien actually doesn't just sit there mourning, crying, mourning the loss of him, and how she actually does something. She, does a lot in this book to help him out. She uses her gifts, her beauty, her gifts as a fae or as an elf, and so I really enjoyed that. I like that, the Lord of Cats. That's what the bad guy. That's the bad guy. So I thought that was like really, and they also have an ally and this dog warrior. That I kind of like that part. I thought that was a really fun take on a villain, and we also have, there are references to Sauron in this, and I really, so this is more of, I recommend this more for hardcore Tolkien fans. Like this book it's like, I feel like it's not a complete story. I mean, it is, but it's told in chunks. Like Christopher Tolkien so it's told in chunks. Like we don't get the whole thing. Like we have the poem. It is a poem, by the way. If you're not into epic poetry, then it's that you might struggle with this, or it's just not for you. But it's epic poetry, and Christopher Tolkien, like, he'll tell a chunk of the story, but then he'll have a chunk of the story and then that his father wrote, but then there's a chunk that kind of elaborates on the story and the, what the poem was about, which I think that did help, because at least, because I'm still kind of learning to get into epic poetry and read it, so it did really help having kind of an explanation of what's going on in that section of the poem. It also, and actually for me personally, reading at least some of it out loud, I think really helped me understand what's going on and really get into the rhythm of it and get into the plot and everything. I did find it interesting that originally Beren was a gnome. I did not realize that. But I thought he was a human, like, so originally he was meant to be a gnome, but I guess later he eventually became human. But yeah, when I watched on the special features for the Return of the King, the big documentary that talks about the whole making of it, and then the Tolkien part where they talk about Tolkien, they refer to Beren as a guy, as a man. And this actually, his relation with his wife, Tolkien's relation with his wife Edith, Christopher's mom, inspired this story. Like, their relationship was very, like, it was a struggle, because one, she was not Catholic, she was a Protestant. So father, I don't remember his name, the guy who raised him after his mom died, Father, like, Francis, was it Francis or some, like, he didn't approve of their relationship and was like, you're kind of all context. So until he was a legal adult, or like 21 or something, he couldn't spend time with her. He was not in contact with her. But it very much inspired this love story. And then, like, he actually, on their grave markers, are the names Beren and Luthien, which I thought was really sweet and romantic, very touching. But I love how, again, I love how she actually takes action. She's not a warrior, but she does her part. Like, uses her magic, her dance, and like her beautiful locks and hair, in fact, like, come in handy. So I really like that. But it's also kind of a quest story. Like, he has a mission. He has to retrieve these objects, this object, and he needs and cross paths all these enemies. He has to prove his worth. Like, it feels like it's a fairy tale and a quest story. I mean, I almost wish that it wasn't like stopped in the middle, like you just got the whole poem all the way through, and then like once you got the whole poem, get like the rest of it, the other half of it being like the explanation and Christopher Tolkien talking about his father writing this poem and what each of it means. I mean, like I said, I appreciate that he kind of explained things, but I wish hadn't been like in the middle of the poem. Like, I wish it had been, told the whole poem and then told the other stuff that explained the poem. But yeah, this was actually really fun, very sweet and romantic, very, a little bit tragic. And now it does help. I do think I can kind of understand why they recommend reading certain things before this one, because there are, like I said, if you haven't read the Silmarillion, then you're not going to know what the Silmaril is. I've read some of it, so I kind of remember vaguely what a Silmaril is. I think it's like a gem, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, if like I said, if you really want to dive deep into Middle-earth and its mythology, then yeah, check these out. Like I said, it is epic poetry, so if you're not into epic poetry, that might hinder you too. So that is Beren Luthien. Okay, and then we have, after that one, I read, okay, so here's another one that I have been reading for a long time and kept put it down, pick it up again, and that is The Three Musketeers. I finally finished it this month. I mean, in April. So this is basically, okay, so you have our main character, D'Artagnan, who he's a young Gascon, eager to become a musketeer and follow in his father's footsteps. And the musketeers are like the king's guard. And he gets there, and right away he meets some trouble. He runs into 3 different men and challenges them to a duel, one right after the other. Well, him and the first guy cross paths, and turns out that his buddies are the 2 other guys D'Artagnan cross paths with, and he finds out they are musketeers. And because of D'Artagnan and his temper, they still want to fight him. And he's all like, of course, like, oh great, you're musketeers, this is great. And so it turns out that when they're getting ready to duel, the Cardinal's guards show up. And the musketeers don't have a great relationship with the Cardinal's guards. There's a bit of a rivalry. And the Cardinal kind of has his puppet strings on the, he kind of has some power over the king. So he kind of manipulates the king. And D'Artagnan immediately is like, because he also does not like the Cardinal's guards, he agrees to help them fight them off, and there's a little bit of a fight. And he actually is like, they're like, oh, you're kind of cool, you helped us out, we like you. And they kind of make him an honorary member. Of course, their boss is like, you can't be one of mine, I can't remember why. And he doesn't say that, but I'm saying I as a reader cannot remember why he couldn't be part of them. He had to go to the first work for his actually cousin, so he's kind of an underling, And now it turns out that the Duke of Buckingham is in town and trying to form a civil relationship with the king, but he also is in love with the king's young new bride, Anne. And they try to secretly meet. She even gives him some jewels that were a gift from the king. And then the cardinal, is whispering in the king's ear, and he persuades him to force the queen to show up at our party with the jewels. So the first part of the book is the Musketeers. They get involved, and they decide they offer to help make sure the queen has her jewels, so she won't get in trouble with the king. So that's the first section. And, so later we don't meet the favorite antagonist for most of us until later on the story. That is My Lady de Winter. She is an assassin who works for the cardinal. And, she's manipulative, she's diabolical, she has a lot of men wrapped around her finger, and she's someone that all men seem to fall in love with immediately. She has this power, this allure over men. And she crosses paths with D'Artagnan, and that causes nothing but problems. So this was actually a really fun read. It was kind of slow in the middle, though. Like, there's at one point when D'Artagnan is distracted by Constance, the wife of his landlord, in trying to make sure he gets to Buckingham and gets the Queen's jewels from him. He ends up getting separated from his new buddies, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and he has to go find them again, and find them horses as well. And there's a handful of chapters where he's crossing past them, and they're all like not in a great, they don't want to leave their current situation. So that part when he's trying to get them to rejoin him and come back to Paris and help him because his beloved Constance got kidnapped. She gets kidnapped twice. Got kidnapped again. So that part, and them trying to find horses and prepare because war is coming between England and France. That's the other big conflict, is that there's tension between England and France that he gets mixed up in. And D'Artagnan has to, and so there's that. But anyway, it was actually really fun, and that whole part in the middle was very slow and just very tedious, and I almost put the book down and almost decided to do that because I wasn't excited to read it. But but once we got through that hurdle, I actually got back into it and kind of enjoyed the ride. And by the way, so my first exposure to this was mostly the adaptation. Seeing the one that came out in the 2000s, and then there was one that came out in the 90s that I really liked. And then there was ones that came out, there were multiple other ones that came out. This has been adapted a lot. And but it was really, so first thing I realized rather quickly is, the movie covers a lot of the basic traits of D'Artagnan and the Musketeers, but they're even more they're not heroic, they're not honorable guys, they're just kind of selfish and lazy. They're middle-aged old men that just are ready to retire, kind of. That's the vibe I got from them. While you have D'Artagnan, who has a very big temper. He's kind of annoying and impulsive and brash. I agree he's a good protagonist because, I feel like a lot of protagonists are like that. Like, young protagonists are very often obstinate, brash, and impulsive, especially male protagonists. But what really bugged me is whenever he met a woman, there were 3 different women in his life. There was, Constance, who was married, by the way. I did like adaptations when they introduce her character, they don't mention that she's married to his landlord. They don't even include that part. And but he also kind of develops a infatuation with my lady, De Winter. He also kind of becomes infatuated with her, which they kind of have that in the movie in the 1995. I think is when it came out. That movie they kind of hinted that, but like they make him seem more vulnerable, and really he's just like in this. It's very different in this book. He's not as vulnerable. I mean, he's charmed by her, but he's not as naive. Even though he's very young, he's not as naive in the book. And which, by the way, there is a part that I feel like there's a part in the book that something happened. He does something to my lady that he attacks her, and that is like kind of glossed over. Like it's not. I don't remember it in my edition, but there are other editions that mention that thing happened. Now there might be just a sentence that I missed that I just glossed over and didn't notice it, which I know considering what it is, but I don't recall seeing it. So maybe this edition glossed over it, but yeah, there is a where he attacks her in an inappropriate way to get revenge. So that's not great. But yeah, D'Artagnan, I have mixed feelings about him as a character. Like, I think he's probably a good protagonist, but he's also kind of one that you want to just shake and be like, you dumbass. He does mature a little bit as the story progresses. My Lady De Winter is, I think, more scary and more intimidating than the Cardinal. She's conniving, she's manipulative. She's also someone who can, makes you feel sorry for her at first until she pulls the rug out from under you. I mean, she gets this one guy to try to assassinate someone for her. Like, this guy ends up falling for her. She convinces him that she's a Christian. Or she's a Puritan. Actually, she convinces him she's a Puritan. So that was like, oh, damn girl, you are good. You're annoyingly good. Or I should say she put on a great performance. Very dramatic. She should get an Oscar. And, so yeah, that's the thing. It's not exactly like, I feel like the movies adaptations from the ones I've seen so far, they just cover like chunks of the novel. They don't cover the whole novel because it's like they take only parts of it. Which, yeah, I mean, a lot of adaptations are condensed unless, they're a mini series or something. Now there is a TV series. I remember that BBC did. I don't know how accurate that is and what that one does, but I mean, it is a TV series, so it lasts a little bit, probably a little bit longer and does more. I still prefer The Count of Monte Cristo over this one, but I'm glad I read it. I feel sad. I feel pleased that I actually finished it instead of just giving up on it, because it was so fun and funny at times. But yeah, so that is The Three Musketeers. So the book I ended the month on was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. This is my first Faulkner. Well, technically I read, this might have been the first one that I read in that collection. There's a collection, American Literature. I still don't know what it is. I still don't remember what it is. But anyway, this is basically about this family, where does it say? Bundren family, I don't know what's the last name, and how they have just lost their family matriarch, Addie, and they're trying to get her to, because she wants to be buried in her birth city or town or whatever, so they have to travel to get her there. And it's a multi-perspective story, various different, like, some of the townsfolk, but mostly the family is telling the story. You have the son. You have Darl, um, Vardaman, um, she Cora, I think is no, Cora isn't one of hers. Cora is one of the neighbors. She has a lot of kids. There's actually a chapter from Addie's point of view, but I think it's right before she died. Cash, one of her sons is Cash. Darl, I already mentioned him. Tola is one of the neighbors, I think. One of the Vardaman. She has a lot of kids. Okay, anyway. So it's told from each of their perspectives. I feel like in this case, even though the perspectives are not that long, it makes sense for this kind of situation because this story is about this one event where they're trying to get their Addie across country to the town where she was born, where her parents live. It is all about their perspectives, all these different characters' perspectives and their thoughts on the situation, their relationship with Addie and how it affects them, and just trying to cope with it. And I feel like they're trying to also go about their lives and deal with it and not break down and get upset, but and also their relationship with her dad. I get the vibe that it wasn't that great. It was very lacking. They were just obedient to him. There were times they're very much in when they're offered charity, someone to help them out, let them when they're on their way, and the father's nope, we're not. We have a goal. We're not gonna go rely on you. We're not your comfort. And the kids, even though they want it, his children want to go. They are obedient to their father. Nope, we can't do it. Dad says no. So that made me kind of sad. They have a baby sister, and they seem to have a very good relationship with her. I feel like there's one of the members of the family. Again, let me see if I can find his name. Not Darl. Darl's the oldest, and I think he's the one that always does what he's told. I'm trying to. Dewey, is it Dewey? No, Dewey Dell is the daughter, I think, is the name of the daughter. Jewel, I think, is the name of Jewel is the one that's, I feel like he's the black sheep of the family. He's the son that kind of misbehaves, but the mom loves him. He's her favorite child almost, and he's the one that kind of rebels, trying to think. I think he was the one that brought the horse along, and the dad said, no, don't bring the horse along, and it does kind of cause them trouble later when they're crossing a river. But it's a very melancholy story, but there are some funny moments of interactions between the family members. But it is very, very sad as they're trying to, do this one thing for their mother and wife, and it's just, and I think, like I said, it makes sense in this case to having multiple perspectives because it's just one event. They're just getting to this one, so it's happening within a period of time, but it's not a long story, so it makes sense that we're just getting bits and pieces from the different perspectives. And also, it's good. They're all mourning the loss of Addie, and so I think it really does benefit the story that we're getting each of their point of views on how they're dealing with this loss, how they're coping with it, and their relationship, how they're trying to, keep their family together and not tear each other's heads off, not to constantly butt heads, and how they're all kind of just trying to. And it's very much about their struggle, their struggle with the situation, and it's just a very sad book. And I don't know what else to say. It was just it was a good read. You know, it was a sad read, but it was still good. Um. Okay, so that is my wrap up for April. I would love to know what you read in April. I hope you read a lot of good books in April. I don't know what my favorite is. Let's see. I guess it's kind of tied between. I don't know because like Christine and Dombey and Son and Monsoon Mansion and Barry Luthien were really good. I mean, like I don't know what I would. It's hard. I always say I'm gonna pick a favorite, but it's very hard to pick favorites. I mean, it's easier for me to talk about ones that I weren't favorites, but I still liked them, like As I Lay Dying and Three Musketeers. Um, but other than that, between those other four, I don't know which one is my favorite. Which one would be, as Mike from Mike's Book Review says, book of the month. I don't know. It would be very hard to decide between those other four which one I liked the best. I mean, they all had their merits. They all were really great stories. But anyway, so sorry for the late wrap up, and I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye.